mining history. And lastly, to promote our mining history and all the fantastic mining structures that we have in our town and on the mountain. I'm just gonna do a couple of admin points. Number one, if you could remain on mute whilst we're going through the lecture, it will allow everyone to hear better. Secondly, if you have questions during the lecture, if you could use the chat function to provide the questions, then Diane will read some of them at the conclusion of the lecture. And the last one is, I like to have a little bit of fun tonight. What is your favorite mining structure? So if everyone can use the chat function to let us know what your favorite mining structure is, Diane will be tabulating them, and we'll let you know at the end of the lecture. And without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Sally.
Hi guys, thank you so much for being here. I want to introduce you to two of my absolute favorite heroes in life. Our structural engineer, Jonathan Richards, better known to all as JR, has had a wealth of experience in earthquake stabilizing and preserving ancient structures. And he's kind of backed away from some of that, but he happens to have a passion for saving our mining structures. And we are so grateful to him because he has done all of the technical studies on everything we've done here. And without Jonathan's wisdom and understanding and experience, this would never happen. And my other favorite hero is Clark Martinez, fourth generation Park City miner. Clark actually worked in the mines. He has a passion for this project because it's his history, it's his family's history, and he also happens to be the favorite mining reclamation contractor in the state of Utah. But he does that in the wintertime, and in the summertime, he gives us his time, and he gives us a whole lot, thousands of dollars worth of pro bono work. We are so grateful to Clark Martinez. Please welcome Clark and JR, the greatest preservation team going.
Thank you.
JR, it's all yours.
Okay. That was very kind of Sally to comment on that about me. My name's J.R. Richards. I'm one of the managing partners of Calder Richards, and as I get older in my years, I get to pick and choose the projects I work on. So I've found a love of working on these mining structures. I mean, I've worked on historic buildings and seismic upgrades since the late 80s, and some very large projects, 13 stories, 12 stories tall. But I find these mining structures is some of the more challenging and rewarding projects. And the reason I really enjoy working on them is, number one, I'm an avid skier and a mountain biker. So I get to ski by these structures in the winter, and I get to mountain bike to them in the summer, and it's just great. And the other reason is it just amazes me how these structures were constructed way back over 100 years ago. And I just find it really interesting, and that's why I keep working on these. I just wanted to do a brief introduction of the process we go through when we start looking at these structures. And it starts out with a field investigation. And as you can see on the screen, there's a bunch of scribbly notes. These are my field notes that give the dimensions, the member sizes, and the geometry of the building. Unfortunately, we don't very often see any as-built drawings as we would on an old historic building. So we have to develop the plan from scratch. And so we have to get up there and field measure. And then the next step is what we do is we identify all the problems, the as-built conditions. We prepare a set of drawings. And I'm using the King Kong ore bin, which we just finished the drawings on, as an example. And when you scroll through the drawings, this shows schematic elevations of the existing conditions. And so what we do is we earmark, like right along here, where we have damaged beams. If you go to the next page, you see that we've outlined that it's out of plumb, it's leaning. And so we document all this stuff. And we include photos to make it very visual on what's going on. And that is the first step. And these drawings can be used for fundraising. Sometimes they're required for federal grants. So that's what we do first. And then the next step is I get with Clark and we develop a plan of what we're going to do to stabilize these structures. And so then our next drawings that we develop, we work off the old as-builts, but then we start showing what we're going to fix. Like right here, we're going to fix some beams. And in talking with Clark on constructability issues, we're hoping on the ore bin to be able to lift it. And that's what these arrows indicate. We're going to lift this up so that we can get under here to put new footings and new beams in. Plus, we're going to try and jack it to where it's not leaning anymore. And we also provide details of this. So here's a plan showing the shaded beams show what we're going to replace. We're showing some footings around the exterior. We're showing some new sleeper footings underneath, and we detail that. So here are the concrete foundations for all the exterior columns. And here is a new sleeper beam that we're going to put for support of the columns inside. And then another item that we attack is we try to add plates and some attachments to hold it together, just in case there's an additional settlement over the years. It'll help hold the structure more plumb. So that's kind of our approach to it. Some of the common problems that we have to address is leveling the structure and jacking the structures up. And in the case of the ore bin, we calculate the weight of these structures, and the ore bin is estimated to be somewhere around 50,000 pounds of weight. So it's quite a deal to try and lift these. We also, one of the other problems is that the timbers usually just sit on grade, and that's where they start rotting out, like the columns. And so we typically place new foundations underneath them. We have deteriorated lumber that we try to decide what is the most critical, and we replace that. And then finally, moisture is the main, other than the timber sitting on the earth, moisture is one of the main causes of deterioration of these structures. So what we try to do is get a plan of applying a preservative or enclosing it. And if you'll look here on the right side of this drawing, you'll see that I've got an option 1 and an option 2, where we're talking about maybe putting a lid on top of this ore bin so that snow can't collect, water penetrating the wood and deteriorating the wood worse. Or another option would be down below where we would go in at the base inside and place a membrane, a waterproof membrane. But that's typically the process. We field measure, we document all the as-built conditions, then I brainstorm with Clark on what is the most feasible and constructability-wise best way to approach stabilizing these structures. So I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, JR. Let me, this was, yeah. Okay, so let me go back to here. Hopefully you could all see my screen again. All right, so this is a picture of the 5 projects that we have completed, which we're going to talk about next, as well as on the lower right, that's the King Kong ore bin. And we're now going to talk about the 5 structures. This is our sixth year, and we've completed 5 structures with another one for next year that both JR and Clark have worked on. So the first one that we did was the King Con Counterweight. This is a picture of the Silver King Consolidated mine, which is up on Bandana. And actually the only thing left of that mine is the ore bin that JR just talked about. And I'm now going to hand it over to Clark and JR. This is the counterweight, which is located at the base of Park City Mountain, just off of the first time lift and run. JR and Clark would like to talk about the challenges of this project.
Well, I'll start and just mention what we found. Again, it was the deterioration of the wood, the timbers, and the lack of, as the picture shows, the timbers are sitting just on dirt. And so we took the approach of trying to replace some of the timbers and to add a new concrete pad to get the posts out of the dirt. And then Clark, you can add into that how you accomplish that, I guess.
Yeah, the challenge of this was the 2 top main beams were rotted right out. Yeah, you can see a picture of the main top beam there with the strap around it. So that I-beam was basically holding the whole thing together. So our approach was lift the thing up, get some cribbing under it, and get it in the air and supported so that we could replace them top beams. Another thing about the counterweight is just about every leg was rotted. So, I didn't want to just build a replica out of all new timber. So we decided to put the footings underneath it and leave the existing timbers and attach them with some 1/2-inch plate. So the old rotten timber is still there. The only thing that was actually replaced was stuff that absolutely had to be. That included the top beams and some of the cross beams, but most of the original timber is still intact there. It's just sticking up now on the steel plates that we embedded in the concrete. I think it turned out really well for what it is. A lot of people look at it and say, wow, what is that?
Well, I should have explained that, Clark. So the counterweight was part of the King Con tramway, which there are still remnants of the tramway off the Crescent lift. And you can see some of that's how they brought the ore down. And since it was mostly wooden structures, hardly any of it is remaining. And it went all the way up to the Bandana, up to the Bandana run. So this held basically the tram just like a chairlift counterweight. It was the counterweight for the tramway for the ore bins.
Not Bandana, it went up to the claim jumper run.
Okay, claim jumper. I'm sorry, I got
wrong resort.
I got the wrong resort, wrong run. Thank you, Sally.
And may I also add that the counterweight was there to hold the cable in place and to keep it taut to keep the ore coming down smoothly. And that thing right there is a precursor to modern ski lift technology.
Yeah, I think it actually had wooden ballasts of rock that they'd fill up and a pulley on it that would hold the cables taut. I think.
So this was our first project. It was completed in 2016 at a cost of $41,000. And then the next big project we're going to talk about is California Comstock. So here's a picture back in the day of the mill. You can see this is actually the remaining structure is up here. Here's more of a close up that you can see of the Comstock mill. And this is pretty much where my cursor is what the remaining bit is, which is located on the Keystone Run over in the Thaynes area at Park City Mountain. So here's what it looked like before. Looks like quite a mess, Clark and JR. How did you fix this one?
When we started looking at this structure, I gotta say it was maybe 14, 15 years ago. And that whole back end that you see right there that's fallen apart was actually intact. And slowly it got bad enough that it just went down. So I think our challenge here was how much can we do and how much can we restore? Now the taller portion over to the right, that was easy to figure something out. We put some cable bracing in so that the wind wouldn't blow that over. And we had some broken beams that we added some additional posts in there. That section's like 3 stories tall. So we had to do that. And then in terms of the reconstruction of the back, Clark was really instrumental in what we did there. Clark, you can tell them how you stockpiled all the wood. And
Yeah, we pretty much took a crane up there and just lifted everything out of it, all the pieces. They were strung all over. Looked like a bomb had blown up there. There was timbers and everything all over. And we cut the rotten parts off of any of them there were, and then used what was left to kind of rebuild the floor and try and piece it back together. I did have some photos from 1983 when the back part was standing, and they helped a lot. And to correct Donald on this one, this was our first project.
Okay.
This was when I first met Bill Rock and them. This is what they wanted me to do because nobody else really wanted to approach it. And I had been at the Daily West capping the shaft. So that's how I came into this work. But anyway, we more or less strung everything out, built what we could back together, and then put it back together from the photos we had and from JR's plans that he had drawn.
yeah, we added a bunch of plates to kind of hold these trusses together. So if it settles a little bit more over the years, these plates will help hold it together. And then and Clark went ahead and added, what do you call those across the side? They're struts to kind of hold the trusses in place. So it just kind of stabilized the structure so it won't fall down again.
We also, rebuilt that wall there and set the water tank back on the wall. Originally, that water tank sat about 12 foot higher than that wall, but we didn't think it'd be safe to put it back up that high again. So it was a good project. But the California Comstock needs continuing maintenance. So just everybody watching this, some of the money going forward should be used at the California Comstock, maybe do a little work every year. That picture there is a picture of the crusher, and it was in the basement of the building after we'd taken it all apart. I don't know if it was originally there. You would think it would be up on the top floor and crush the material before it goes through the mill, but we pulled it out and it kind of sits there on the trail now.
Okay, and you can see the crusher, which is sitting behind the mill to this day, just on the trail there. All right, so that project we completed in 2017, but as Clark says, we need to give it a little bit of TLC every year. And so far we have spent $74,000 saving that structure. We then went up the canyon up to Jupiter Bowl, and it actually took me about 2 years to find the Jupiter ore bin. It's right off the sort of the west face of Jupiter Bowl. JR was saying he likes to jump off the roof.
Actually, that was the first time I think I saw it. Was I skied to it, and I looked at it and I thought that'd make one nice jump. It's too bad I'm not younger that I could just hop off of that thing. And then following that, I'd mountain bike up to it. Again, the problem with this is it was racking a little bit, but again, the column bases, as you see in the photo, were buried and they were just rotting away. So what we ended up doing is new foundations for this. We kind of racked it back in place. We added a few connectors. These are pretty solid structures, so I didn't feel like we needed to add a lot of plates. And then because of the snow collecting inside, we added a roof on top. And then Clark, you can kind of you can tell them how difficult it was to build these footings.
Yeah, pretty much it was all, you have to have hand labor. Of course, you can see you can't get in there with a backhoe or nothing. So my crew hand dug them all out. We jacked the whole structure up, got it back to level, supported it temporarily. And, then we built the brackets and poured the sonotube, and each one was a different height according to how much of the bottom post was rotted off. So we'd cut it off to where the post was good and pretty much put piers underneath the whole thing. Once again, I like to save the wood that's there. I know it kind of takes a little bit away from the historical character, but if you replaced all those, you'd just have a reproduction. Yeah.
And I think this is close to what, 9,000 elevation? It's wet. So just getting up there took a while.
Yeah. It was fun.
And there is the completed ore bin, which was pretty much done 2017. That was a relatively thrifty project at $37,000. And we'll have that to enjoy for many years to come. Okay, so actually in parallel with doing the Jupiter ore bin, Clark was doing work on the Little Bell ore bin. Now this is at Deer Valley, and this is on Bandana Run, though very little is left of the Little Bell other than the ore bin and the overburden pile behind it. And as you can see, without the overburden hill behind the ore bin, it would have fallen over completely. So this was in pretty bad shape. How'd you save this one?
So yeah, it was leaning into the hillside and it was almost taking on a boomerang shape to it. And the way it was constructed, you had these beams coming back into the post on the hillside. So rather than doing isolated footings on the backside, we put in a grade beam. And then on the front side, we put in pads. And then I don't know how Clark got this square, but he did it. Maybe you can tell us how you did that, Clark. There's a picture of the grade beam on the back before they poured it.
You know, the first thing we do is jack it up and get it supported with other timbers outside of the work area. This one we had to put some cables around it and pull it one way or pull it the other way. And with the cables and the getting it up, you know, once it was in place, then it's pretty simple to work underneath it. I think the next photo probably shows us the cables around. No, that's the front of it. We pretty much had to replace all the front legs and cross members to hold the front up. That's looking down the front side of it on our spot footers. Yeah, pretty much all that front there was replaced. It was replaced with old timbers though that I had gotten up at the Comstock. Because a lot of times you cut the rotted part off and you end up with a 6-foot piece or a 5-foot piece or something you can't use anywhere else. But we got lucky and were able to use the wood from the Comstock to rebuild the bottom of the little bell. I don't know, Park City and Deer Valley, maybe that's an issue, but anyway, we did use, you know, here you can see the cables. You see this cable here. We put some dead men in the dump and pulled it back. And then we had a cable all the way around it going over this direction to a tree to the south. Yeah. And then once it was all more plumb again, then we knew where to put the grade beam and could connect everything to it.
So look at that today. It's like amazingly different from what it was 3 years ago. And we completed that in 2018 at a cost of $57,000. And now on to the biggest project that we ever took on, which was the Thaynes conveyor. And we're going to do this in sections using the inner, the outer, and then the base of the conveyor, so you can see what a challenge this was. Who would like to start?
Well, I'll tell you a little bit about the structure. This is a unique structure. It's what we call a suspended box beam structure. And if you'll look on the right side of the photograph, right by the no trespassing sign, you'll see this boxed, cross-braced section underneath. And that is supporting the actual platform for the conveyor. Then what supports that box beam is this cable that runs up to these trestles. And the problem we had here was that that is the critical point of support right at that where the arrow is. And we had a lot of failure in the beams, the edge beams for the platform and the top beam of the trestle. And it just started to tilt over because of that. And settlement a little bit also had an effect on it. And at the base of the trestles, some of them sat on concrete walls, but they had a timber runner underneath that totally rotted out. So the trestle actually, the columns of the trestle actually just dropped. You'll see it in other photos. So here's where Clark shored it up. I think it's the year before we really got going on it. Shored the area up. And then we struggled over how we were going to do this. And I was almost of the opinion that we'd replicate it. And then Clark came up with this great idea. He said, well, we've got to replace the stuff that you've shown on your drawings and these perimeter beams. He says, I'm just going to take it apart and put it back together. And that's exactly what he did. So, Clark, you can take it from there.
Yeah, the problem with the Thaynes was I was afraid to get on it earlier. So I wanted to crib it all up. And the first year we worked on it, we cribbed it all up and then we could get on it and look and see exactly what we had to do. But after scratching my head, we went up and worked on the top part, started working on the post bases and stuff like that. And so the first year we got it, we supported it, got a lot done up on top, got all the belting off. The second year we decided we'd tear it apart. And luckily it came apart in nice big pieces. It came apart beautifully and it went back together beautifully. And we got real lucky to have found them timbers to replace I believe they were 12 by 10s. No, they was 6 by 10s, the original ones, and we replaced them with 12 by 6s. So the new beams we put on there were a little bit shorter, but a little bit fatter, but still worked out great. And you can't even tell.
And I might add that we toyed with, because a lot of those beams need to be replaced and we wanted to keep the same look. We toyed with putting in glulam beams, and that we both didn't like that idea. I thought about putting steel channels on the back side of the old wood. And all of a sudden I get a call from Clark. He said, I found some timber and big lengths. And I said to him, buy as many as you can. So we really lucked out on that. It was great. Yeah.
Good. So let's talk about the outer conveyor. That's what it looked like a few years ago after that big snow season we had.
Yeah.
Yes. Go ahead, JR. That's the top part.
Well, that was the end, and it was pulling down the rest of the conveyor structure. It was starting to pull down the rest of it on the top of the mine dump. So what I was hoping we were going to do is just saw cut it and let it fall. But I don't think Park City would have liked us to do that. So we got a game plan together. We put together some drawings. Again, it was mostly footing work, putting in new footings. I think, Clark, you just took this all down and then salvaged what you could.
Yeah, on that part there, we took it completely apart and then rebuilt it new. The rest of the structure, every single one of the supports, we jacked it up and put a footing under it and then made a custom plate. So once again, every one of them was a little bit different, dependent on how much of it was rotted away. So every post got a footing and a plate, and sometimes a 1.5-inch redwood plate or a 8x8 block, whatever it took to lift it up and get it all straight again.
I think what's really neat about this too is that Clark put back the actual conveyor structure on top rather than just leave a platform.
Yeah. There's a good picture of it.
Yeah, I didn't want to. I recommended that we get rid of the actual conveyor belt because it was rubber and it was extremely heavy. And when we first looked at it, it still had all the ore in there. So Clark had to take all the ore off the belt. And then he got the belt off, and then he had to take down the conveyor section in pieces so he could do the work on the structure. But I think it's really cool that we saved the conveyor. Yeah, I think it really adds to the historic nature of it. Yep.
And then this is what the base looked like before you started.
Yeah, and you'll see at the bottom of the column, you'll see a big steel plate. That column pushed right through that wood beam on top of the concrete wall because it rotted out. So what would happen is those plates, we don't have a close-up of it, but those plates had these bolts attaching to them down below, down at the foundation.
Down here?
No, down at the concrete.
Oh, okay.
There.
Down here.
So these bolts that were embedded in the concrete were
Just one
sticking
here.
10 inches out of the plate because that column crushed right through that runner on the top of the wall. So we, you know, when Clark pulled all these trestles down to fix them, we replaced all that stuff. So there it is right there.
Looks a hell of a lot better.
Yep.
Yeah, I was pretty lucky to not have to come up with a lot of timbers because I could use the ones that were rotted, the tall ones, and I could rebuild them, the smaller ones. So I only had to buy one new timber to build all them towers for that part.
Okay, so that was a two-year plus project, and we got completed in early October this year, and came in at around $232,000. And you know, as Sally said earlier, without everyone's donation and contributions and grants that we've received over the years, we would have not have been able to save this structure. And I've personally never seen anything like this before. And I think it's one of the things that's unique about Park City Mountain is this structure. And speaking of which, if you haven't voted yet, please use the chat function to tell us what your favorite mining structure is. We'll announce the results in a short bit. All right, so we already had a little bit of overview about the engineering drawings for the King Kong ore bin, which is going to be our 2021 project. Clark, would you like to talk a little bit about what the challenge you see from the construction side of saving the structure?
I think the toughest thing on the King Kong ore bin will be lifting it up. Like JR says, it weighs 50,000 pounds. My idea is to get some I-beams, put them through each one of them ore slots there and cut a hole in the other side. And these I-beams will protrude out 10 feet or so on each end of it. And we'll jack it up a little bit at a time until we get it in the air and sitting on these I-beams. And hopefully then we can rebuild the bottom, everything we need's done. I think it'll be pretty easy, really. I hope.
Everyone, you heard it here first. And we have it on record as we're recording it. So,
Yeah.
Well, I showed it that way on the drawing, so it's got to be easy. Right, Clark?
Yeah, I think the hardest part's going to be hand mixing all the concrete up there. So each post will have a footing, and you know it takes about 10 bags per. So you're probably looking at a couple hundred bags of concrete that's going to have to be mixed.
you were saying earlier today, how many bags of concrete did you have to hand mix at the Thaynes conveyor?
I think the Thaynes conveyor took close to 500 bags of concrete, and
That's,
we hand mixed. Yeah.
That's a lot of concrete mixing.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't do a lot of it myself personally, but
okay. So this will be the sixth.
My guys do.
Yeah, that's it. Good to delegate that kind of stuff.
Good workers. Yeah, I got some good hands.
All right, so this will be the sixth project that Clark and JR have worked together on. And then in the future, we have these two absolutely massive structures, which are the Thaynes head frame, which you can see on the left, and then the Silver King head frame, which is a historical picture on the right. So the Thaynes head frame logically is at the base of the conveyor. What do you see as the challenges with this structure, Clark?
Right now, the challenge with the Thaynes is the shaft itself is collapsing below it and opening up the ground directly below it. So we could very easily have another Daily West right there. The difference is when the Daily West head frame fell over, it fell forward, and the cable almost held the tower up, but the cable tore through the building itself and then let the head frame go in the hole. The Thaynes head frame's failing on the other side. So the floor inside the hoist building has settled, I'll bet, a foot in the last 4 years. And them two concrete pilasters that hold the rear legs of that thing, if they fall, the thing's going to fall backwards into the building, into the hoist itself. So I think it's very important that we take care of the shaft as soon as we can.
Yeah.
And maybe the state of Utah will kick in on that. So.
Yeah, and while we're talking about that, I'd like to thank Stantec Engineering, Brian Buck, who's attending today. They've done some pro bono work as to preliminary overview of how we can go about stabilizing the shaft, which used to be the skier subway shaft. For those of you who remember that, was this, which goes down 1,600 feet, and we need to stabilize that before we can actually do any work on the building itself, because if we don't do the shaft, the whole building will come collapsing down thanks to the shaft subsidence. So this we're estimating at $1 million. And to give you perspective, the preliminary estimates on just stabilizing the shaft is $400,000. So it's a lot of money.
Don, I might add that Brian came up with a really good idea on the head frame about trying to temporarily support it just in case that shaft goes. And so we're going to be looking at that in the near future in terms of something that's temporarily bracing it.
The belt and braces approach, correct?
Yeah, the belt and braces approach.
And then similarly, we have the Silver King head frame, which everybody sees at the base of the Bonanza lifts, which has the same type of issues, though to a lesser degree than or less critical, but the same type of subsidence. Any comments on that, J.R. Clark?
Yeah, in addition to the shaft itself, I think we got some hillside issues to deal with on that too. Some of the walls are starting to look bad, but these structures are pretty resilient. It's amazing. The actual roof structures are in pretty good shape, all said and done.
Yeah, we're unfortunately every winter as you go up, you see more and more of the roof and the siding falling off the structure.
Right, right.
Yeah, plus this picture here is prior to the collapse in the winter, a few winters ago. So half of that building already collapsed, I think.
So the other, that building is further over, actually.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, you're
It's
right.
not the biggest building
That's
that collapsed 2 winters ago.
You're right. Yep, it's on my right. Yeah.
Okay.
But I think the Silver King's in pretty good shape still.
Okay,
Other
so
than
that'll probably follow on from the Thaynes. We're prioritizing the Thaynes because of the rapid rate of the subsidence there. Okay, so that wraps up. Hopefully you enjoyed JR and Clark's overview of the 6 structures that we've either saved or going to save, and the 2 big ones that we have in the future. Diane, do we have any questions that have come up?
We have one. Why have ore bins been the first projects that we've worked on?
Sally, you're on silent.
Because they're the low-hanging fruit. And because fundraising is so difficult. We know what to do. We just need more money to do it. And we need more partners. I think many of you are aware enough of what's going on with the larger picture. We have been able to bring in the Empire Past Master Owners Association to fulfill their obligations for historic preservation on the Deer Valley side with the Little Bell and the Daily West, which will be going up next spring. But we don't have a dedicated source of funding. So with our fundraising efforts, we are forced to be able to do the projects that we're able to fund. So if anybody out there has an idea of partners with deep pockets who can help us, we'd certainly love to work with you and hear from you. Donald will show you my contact information. He has his contact information listed later, but as you can see, we have the world's greatest team in place, and we can do anything as long as we can pay for it.
Yep. Any other questions, Diane?
We do. Any plans to work on the Silver King mill below the Bonanza chair? What are the issues there?
Donald, that's you.
That is an excellent question. That my dream is that we turn that into a museum at some point. Where we could have an entire replica of a mill that we could take people through as to how the mills worked. But because it is not one of the structures that you can ski by, we have prioritized in conjunction with Vail and Park City Mountain Resort, the structures that everybody sees, skiing, biking, etc. And because the mill is down in the valley, down below the base of Bonanza Lift, that you really can't see, that is going to be after. I mean, we would like to stabilize it, but it's going to be after we take care of Thaynes, the Thaynes head frame and the Silver King head frame, which could be, because they're both like $1 million projects, could be many, many years in the future. And the mill is probably a multi-million-dollar project as well.
And the mill isn't going anywhere. It's stable. It's in poured concrete, and everything that remains is pretty stable. So all it's going to take is reinterpretation money, which is easier to come by, I hope.
If I can add to that, this is Donovan Simmons. There'll be an article in the Park Record in January. The original Silver King mill, the wooden mill, burnt down 100 years ago in January the 21st, I think. So there'll be an article in that. So the current mill, the concrete and the mill that is there now, the concrete and steel mill, was built right after that. So that's almost 100 years old as well.
We consider that new, right, Donovan?
Yeah, it's compared to the California Comstock and some of the others, yeah.
And may I say to everybody, thank you to Donovan, because this whole Friends of Ski Mountain Mining History lecture series was his idea, and he has organized and coordinated the entire thing. Thanks, Donovan.
Welcome.
We have two more questions. Can you say a bit more about the number of employees or man hours involved in these various projects?
That's a good one for Clark.
Yeah, I have 6 guys that generally work for me year round. Most of the time, my main line of work is closing abandoned mines, and I've been doing it for 30 years. So during this time, we stabilize old head frames and stuff like that all the time. So I can't do that during bat maternity season. So I'm always open in the summertime from July to October, because the bats are having maternity and you can't close a mine because there might be bats in it, stuff like that. But I usually have 4 guys that work under me full time, and we work 40 hours a week pretty much from 1st of July till first part of October, and been doing that for 5 years.
Okay. And another question is, have Vail and Deer Valley made financial contributions?
Enormous contributions. Vail, over the last 5 years, has given us $200,000 with a pledge to continue their funding so that Clark can continue to maintain the buildings that he's stabilized for a period of 15 years. At the end of that, we'll have to renegotiate it. But Vail has been incredibly generous, and the leadership at Deer Valley and the leadership at Park City Municipal has come forward to help us with the projects over at Deer Valley. We are blessed with the most amazing team that you can possibly imagine, and the most amazing public support. I just get shivers when I think about how many people support us, about what a popular project this is, and about how our grandchildren will be able to see the mining history of Park City that remains now and appreciate it as we do.
Okay, so the next one is there a good map showing all of the existing structures around both resorts?
These, got a map here. So these were produced by, I don't know if you can see it. Whoops. We have these were produced by Park City Mountain, but they're sort of gold dust. They're really hard to find. That have a map of the all the structures at Park City Mountain. Actually, the best map is that has all the mining structures on it for all of Park City is the Mountain Trails map. They have a little mining icon next to each of the mining sites, and you know they're pretty much at the location of how many of those interpretive signs, Sally, do you have? 28? 38 of the interpretive signs at either the existing structures or the former mining sites. But it would be good if they were right on the ski maps.
You know, I hear a call to action. We've heard that question about 4 times in the last week. So I think, Donald, you and I may have to ski a little bit less and work a little bit harder.
I have to set up the butter up Mike Gore.
All right. So we have 2 comments and then a question. Bravo to all the friends plus Clark and his crew. And thank you, JR and Clark, as well as the committee for your tireless efforts. It is so very important to our town. Given the issues with the Daily West head frame, do you need to prioritize the Thaynes head frame so we can prevent a similar situation? Is a capital campaign necessary?
Yes, a capital campaign is necessary. The cost of doing what JR and Clark recommend and their cautious expediency warnings to us are very well founded. Yes, we need a capital campaign.
Yeah, and you know, we have a lot of stakeholders, particularly for the Thaynes head frame, because the Spiro Tunnel, which the shaft goes down to, is one of the waterways. So it's of interest to keep an airway for the Park City water department so that they can access, you know, the entire Spiro Tunnel with adequate air. We have the Utah Oil, Gas, and Mining as one of our people participating in this. They have funds, which you know, that's what Clark does most of the year. Potentially, they can help us with some capital, but we definitely, you know, we would do naming rights for these structures and give lots of, if we could get a corporate sponsor. But up until now, we have not come up with the, you know, the one 6-figure check donor to help us on these 2 big projects that we have to go. And as Sally said earlier, the great thing about all the structures up at Empire Pass and Deer Valley Way are now going to be handled by the Empire Pass Masters Owners Association and Park City Municipal, and that's funded through a 1% real estate tax on all the transactions, pretty much above above the Silver Lake area, all the way up to the top of Empire Pass. All that commercial and residential real estate all generates taxes that can go towards the structure. But unfortunately, that money cannot go towards the structures over at Park City. So we've got to figure out that funding ourselves.
So put your thinking caps on and help us find partners.
Can you also post the maps on the websites listed? And are you getting any COVID-19 money?
We haven't asked for any, should we? Please, somebody call me and let me know if there's something available.
I don't think, I mean, the museum has benefited from many of the COVID grants that have been available and helped keep the museum in business this year. But since we're a volunteer group, we don't, 100% of the funds actually go right into our projects. So we don't really we're not like a separate organization that has been materially impacted by COVID.
And that's all the questions I see right now. If anyone else has a question, please feel free to ask. Yeah, so that's where we are.
What is the favorite mining structure?
Thaynes Conveyor.
Thaynes Conveyor, all right.
That's been the most difficult and the most expensive. And somebody asked, why did we do the ore bins first? And the reason is because the Thaynes Conveyor was the most difficult, thank you, Clark, and the most expensive, and everything else is more difficult and more expensive. So we have the world's greatest team on board. But Donovan has another picture to show us of something that you might be willing to look at for a Christmas present.
Whoops.
Look.
Sorry. There you go. So yeah, go ahead, Sally.
Lisa and Jeff Ward donated 10 pictures to us that they had bought years ago that had been hanging in the Treasure Mountain Inn, maybe from the 1960s when it was first built. So they donated these pictures to us, and Jim Delaney at Right Angle Framing put them all back together again, rematted them, put the frames back on, touched up the frames, and we have 10 of these historic Park City photographs to offer you as Christmas presents for your favorite person. On the top left is a picture of a barber shop that was Nan Reese McPoland's father's barber shop. He came from Mercer and decided that it was better in Park City. They lived up on Marsack Avenue, but his barbershop was down on Main Street. I love this because Jim Delaney at Right Angle Framing pasted the old handwritten notes from Nan McPoland on the back of it. This is really special. The picture of Snow Park ski area, which is over to the right. I'm guessing you can't see it because of the pictures of people there. But anyway, you may buy these photographs for a minimum donation of $100 to the museum. And if you have lots of money jingling in your pocket and a place to put it, we have 3 of the town lift chair lifts, 3-person lifts that we can deliver to your front doorstep with a bow on it from Santa Claus for a minimum donation of $2,000. And then put your thinking caps on, because we really are a needy cause. We're not a humanitarian cause, but we are a needy community cause. Thank you so much.
And Sally, someone just asked, what size are the photographs?
No,
They're
God.
about 2 feet by 3 feet.
Hold it up so you can see it in comparison to me. It looks like about 18 by 24. Just a minute.
Probably bigger than that.
Yeah, I think they're more like 24 by 36. Including the frame. They're big. They're good size.
And someone else mentioned that everyone should buy their Thaynes conveyor ornament from 2019 at the museum. Good plug.
There you go.
Okay, you know how big I am. Picture.
All right. All right. Well,
They're pretty good size.
I just want to,
2 feet. Yeah.
there you go. So just like to thank, is that, Diana, any other questions?
How big is the chair?
The chair, you know, I should have put a picture up on of the chair.
It's a 3-passenger chair.
It's a 3-person chair.
When you get the credits at the bottom of this, you'll have my phone number. Call me and I'll send you a picture of it.
Sally, yeah, either phone number's there, 435-640-3759, or Sally Cousins Elliott at gmail.com. Or, and by the way, I believe these pictures are going to be in the museum store effective Sunday.
Yes, Andrew's going to pick them up on Sunday and take them to the museum, and you can buy them as Christmas presents in the museum gift shop as of probably Sunday afternoon.
We will not have the chairlifts in
Come to my house and buy them right now tonight.
we will not have the chairlifts in the store, I can assure you of that.
Right, those are in storage.
All right. Okay, so just want to wrap it up. Thanks to JR and Clark for their insight on how we, you know, I've been waiting actually for this lecture since I joined the group in 2017, as to how they actually go about saving these dilapidated structures and making them good enough for the next 100 years. So thank you, gentlemen, for your time. And thank you, Donovan, for coordinating it, as well as Diane. And of course, I'd like to thank my co-chair and founder of the group, Sally, for making all this happen. So thanks again for joining us tonight, and we look forward to seeing you at a future Friends of Ski Mountain Mining History lecture in 2021.
That's good.
Take care.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight. We appreciate it.